Hello, Magic players and collectors. Welcome back to the Land Library. I'm your librarian, and in this episode of latest Loadout, I'm covering the next backlog set, which is actually not a set, it's a few things. You probably already know from the title and thumbnail, but this is all the Universes Beyond lands from 2024. I've finished all of the main sets from 2024, and to finish off the year, I thought I'd go over the Universes Beyond stuff. And I decided to put them all together because only maybe the Fallout set actually has enough cards to make a video from, and it wasn't even a proper set, it was just commander decks. But stuff like the Miku and Marvel Secret Lair drops definitely don't have enough to make a video, so it's all just one big video together. Now, last thing before getting into the actual cards, this video is going over the Fallout, Assassin's Creed, Hatsune Miku, Marvel, and Monty Python cards, but not the Clue ones since I already included those in Murders at Karloff Manor. You already know what's coming first, it's the basics, and there's quite a few of them. The Assassin's Creed set has 2 full arts of each of the main 5, and an additional regular print for each except for Forest in the starter kits. Not sure why they left out Forest, but they did. Then Fallout adds 2 more full arts of each of the main 5, and an additional full art of Wastes, although the Wastes was not in the actual decks, it was from the Secret Lair. There are no Miku, Marvel, or Monty Python basics. In fact, Monty Python only had 1 land at all. It almost wasn't even in this video, but it does have a land, so it is here, which is a reskin of Dark Depths called Castle of Arg. It does everything Dark Depths would do, so of course it comes in with 10 ice counters, and removes an ice counter for 3 generic mana, and then once it's at 0, it gets sacrificed and creates a Merit Lodge token, which is a black legendary avatar creature token with 20/20, flying, and indestructible. And although not a land, I think I should also mention that Merit Lodge also got a reskin with the Black Beast of Arg. Next up, let's go through the Marvel ones, since it just barely beats out Monty Python with 2 lands, a reskin and a reprint. The reskin is of Karn's Bastion to Wakandan Skyscraper, which taps for a colorless, or for 4 generic, taps to proliferate. And the reprint is Inventor's Fair, a legendary land that also taps for colorless, and checks for 3 artifacts in a couple of different ways. At your upkeep, it checks for 3 artifacts, and you gain 1 life if you have them, and it has an activated ability that can only be used while you control 3 artifacts, which costs 4 generic, and then you tap and sack to search your library for any artifact and put it in your hand. And next up, with kind of 2, but also not, is Assassin's Creed, which has 2 cycles, 1 complete cycle and 1 incomplete cycle. The complete cycle is the enemy-colored Horizon lands, all in borderless art. These lands, including Fiery Islet, Sunbaked Canyon, Silent Clearing, Nurturing Peatland, and Waterlogged Grove, are a type of Painland, costing 1 life to tap for either of their colors, but also have the option to pay a generic and tap and sack to draw a card. And the incomplete cycle is just 2 pure tap lands, Stone Quarry and Submerged Boneyard. I'm not sure why there's only 2, or why these 2 were in particular. I don't know if they're like significant to Assassin's Creed lore. I'm not really well versed in Assassin's Creed lore. But yeah, there's 2 pure tap lands. But moving on to the Miku lands, there's Inspiring Vantage, the Boros-colored fast land, which comes in tapped unless you control 2 or few other lands. Then Scrying Sheets, a snow land that's only gotten a list reprint before this, since its initial release all the way back in Cold Snap. It can tap for a colorless, or you can pay a generic and a snow mana to tap and look at the top card of your library. If it's a snow card, you can reveal it, put it in your hand. Otherwise, if it's not a snow card, or you just don't want to reveal it, you put it back on top of your library. Next up, a channel favorite, a land that can be all lands, Thespian Stage. This land can tap for a colorless, or for 2 generic, it taps to become a copy of any land currently in play, except it also keeps its copying ability while copied. And last but not least, Command Tower, a land so well known that it doesn't even need text. because it was printed without text here. But just in case you don't know what it does, the Fallout set also printed it, but with text, in borderless and normal. It taps for 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Which leads us into the Fallout lands. There is the commander set and a secret layer drop, all of which have new art, but for the sake of this video not being absurdly long like the Final Fantasy video, which also had only new art, I'll give you the highlights and throw the rest in rapid fire. Starting off with Wasteland, a very fitting land for Fallout. This is a classic that can tap for colorless or tap and sack to destroy a target non-basic land. And then War Room, which also taps for colorless, but can pay 3 generic and life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity to tap and draw a card. Keeping up with tapping for colorless, there's Reliquary Tower, which also gives you a limitless hand size. Then Command Beacon, which can also tap and sack to put your commander from the command zone into your hand. And we're all done with tapping for colorless, so now we've got Bojuka Bog, which taps for black, but exiles a target graveyard when it enters the battlefield, and also enters tapped. Then Reflecting Pool, which just taps for a mana of any color that another land you control could produce. And for one last land that doesn't even tap for mana at all, Fabled Passage. It taps and sacks to search your library for any basic, then put it in play and shuffle. Or put it in play tapped, mind you, because if you have 4 or more lands, then that basic gets untapped. Finally, on to the rapid fire section, but as a note, a lot of these also have extended arts, and I'll just put them both up together instead of mentioning it every time. For rapid fire, we've got Ash Barrens, Buried Ruin, Canopy Vista, Canyon Slough, Cinder Glade, Clifftop Retreat, Darkwater Catacombs, Dragon Skull Summit, Drowned Catacomb, Evolving Wilds, Exotic Orchard, Fetid Pools, Glacial Fortress, Hinterland Harbor, Irrigated Farmland, Isolated Chapel, Jungle Shrine, Memorial to Glory, Mortuary Mine, Mossfire Valley, Myriad Landscape, Mystic Monastery, Nesting Grounds, Nomad Outpost, Opulent Palace, Path of Ancestry, Prairie Stream, Razortide Bridge, Roadside Reliquary, Rogue's Passage, Rootbound Crag, Rustvale Bridge, Scattered Groves, Scavenger Grounds, Shadowblood Ridge, Sheltered Thicket, Silver Bluff Bridge, Skycloud Expanse, Smoldering Marsh, Spire of Industry, Sulphur Falls, Sungrass Prairie, Sunken Hollow, Sunpetal Grove, Tainted Field, Tainted Isle, Tainted Peak, Tainted Wood, Temple of Abandon, Temple of Deceit, Temple of Enlightenment, Temple of Epiphany, Temple of Malady, Temple of Malice, Temple of Mystery, Temple of Plenty, Temple of Silence, Temple of the False God, Temple of Triumph, Terramorphic Expanse, Treasure Vault, Windbrisk Heights, and Woodland Cemetery. There's not a lot of new lands since only Fallout and Assassin's Creed made anything new, but the new lands are pretty cool. Assassin's Creed only has 2, Brotherhood Headquarters, a land that taps for a colorless, or taps for any color, but that can only be spent on casting an assassin, abilities of assassins, or on cards with the free-running keyword. This land also has an etched foil version, which is pretty cool. And the second land is Abstergo Entertainment, which can tap for a colorless, pay a generic and tap for a mana of any color, or pay 3 generic, tap and exile to put a target historic card from your graveyard to your hand, and then exile all graveyards. And this one has both an extended art and an etched foil. As for the Fallout set, there's a few more, especially since it has a cycle, which is already several. Fallout finally added the enemy-colored filter lands introduced in Odyssey. These are filter lands that, at the cost of 1 generic, tap for both colors of mana. And like pretty much every other land in the Fallout set, these also have extended arts. These include Desolate Mire, Ferris Lake, Overflowing Basin, Sunscorched Divide, and Viridescent Bog. Next up is Diamond City, an interesting utility land that enters with a shield counter on it and can tap for a colorless, or tap to move a shield counter to a creature. But this ability can only be used if 2 or more creatures entered the battlefield under your control this turn. And on the topic of utility lands, we've got Helios 1, which can tap for a colorless, pay a generic and tap to create an energy, or at sorcery speed, you can pay 3 generic, tap and sack to pay X energy and destroy target non-land permanent that has a converted mana value of X. Moving on to another land that tap and sacks, for 4 generic and a red, Junktown can tap and sack to create 3 junk tokens. Or, you can just tap it for a colorless. What's a junk token, you might be asking? Well, it's an artifact token exclusively in Fallout that tap and sacks to exile the top card of your library, but that card can be played from exile this turn. This is also known as an impulse draw. And the final land in this set and section of the video is Mariposa Military Base. This land enters untapped. You can choose for it to enter tapped instead to give yourself 2 rad counters, and then it can tap for a colorless, or at the cost of 5 generic, can tap to draw a card and cost 1 less for each rad counter you have. Obviously, with not a single new standard legal card in this whole video, there's no impact on standard at all. But there was still new cards which could have an impact on, like, Commander, but let's get the weak ones out of the way first. Mariposa Military Base is pretty rough outside of a Fallout deck that specifically specs into rad counters. It only generates 2 rad counters on its own, and at the cost of coming in tapped, and since those typically go away over a turn or two, you're unlikely to actually get any value out of the discount those rad counters would provide before you can actually use the land. And an effective 6 mana from 5 and a tap for a single draw is pretty bad without that discount. It's technically still better than no option at all, but you're much better off with just like the Horizon lands out of Assassin's Creed. Brotherhood Headquarters is in the same boat, where it only really gets value in an Assassin or free running deck, and that's it. But free running is basically only in Assassin decks anyways, so it's kind of just Assassin decks. In any other deck, it's effectively just Oasis, but without the benefits of being a basic. Junktown is a bit less deck dependent, but junk tokens are still quite deck specific, since junk tokens are basically just a free impulse draw, and although the price of 5 mana and a land sack is fairly steep, 3 tokens that can be used at any time, like on a later turn when all your mana is back to actually play the cards that you impulse draw, it's pretty decent for decks that like impulse draws. Helios 1 is also pretty deck specific, but a little more widely useful as well. Obviously, it goes in energy decks, which can be much more varied than the previous decks, but technically can still completely function in a bubble, since it can produce and use energy all on its own. Its ability to destroy any non-land permanent is also quite useful for reacting to any situation you find yourself in, and can cheaply and repeatably make energy. It's not exactly game-breakingly powerful, but it's a solid addition to any energy deck. The new filter lands are fine. The allied filter lands have always been decent and commonly used lands, and this is just the rest of them. They don't have a profound impact on the landscape of Commander, but decent mid-level dual colors have their place. Abstergo Entertainment is also a decent land for Commander, at least. It's also a filter land, but of any color, so it can go in any deck, and its ability to return a historic card to your hand is pretty nice. But exiling all graveyards is the real power of this land. This is a versatile card that goes especially well in graveyard hate decks, but can also add an extra option to, like, any deck, really, as a backup counter to certain matchups. But the best land in these sets is Diamond City. Shield counters are very useful, and although it only makes 1, it can be extremely potent in a proliferate deck, making extra shield counters and moving them onto creatures. The only problem is 2 creatures entering before you can move them, but it's just enter, not cast, which means even something like a Mobilize 2, or, well, anything that makes 2 token creatures will satisfy that pretty easily. And paired with Nesting Grounds, you could move multiple shield tokens per turn, or even get around the 2 creatures. It's for sure more of a combo piece than a solo card, though, so it's not like powerful. It needs to be in the right situation. I'm going to skip the scores this time. This is multiple unrelated sets and secret layers, none of which are even standard legal, so like obviously standard and theme are out, and since it's mostly just special prints, it kind of ruins the art category as well. So my normal scoring just doesn't really fit, and the score this time is just non-applicable. If you've made it this far in the video, please drop a like for turn and subscribe for more landfilled content. If I missed anything, got anything wrong, or you just have questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next backlog latest loadout, which will be Lost Caverns of Ixalan.